The first warning came from the edge of known space. It was a simple message that reached the Galactic Council in the early hours of what would become known as the last day of peace. The message was short and filled with terror. They have returned. The Devourers are here. May the gods help us all. The message came from Commander Zelthara of the Zephyrian Empire. She was the last living being on the research station at the galaxy's rim. Her voice shook as she spoke into the recording device. Behind her, strange lights flickered through the station windows. The lights were not stars. They were the engines of ships that should not exist. 3 hours later, the signal died. The Galactic Council had heard stories of the Devourers. Every old civilization had legends about them. They were the monsters that came from the dark between galaxies. They were the machines that ate worlds and turned everything into more of themselves. But those were just stories. Old tales told to frighten children. The Zephyrian Empire was not a collection of children. They were one of the oldest and strongest powers in the galaxy. Their crystal cities floated in space like jewels. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop the light of suns. If anyone could stand against ancient monsters, it would be them. The second message came 12 hours later. This time it was from Admiral Keffer, commander of the Zephyrian First Fleet. His face was covered in cuts. Smoke filled the air behind him. Emergency lights cast red shadows across his features. The outer defense line has fallen, he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed the truth. We counted over 3,000 enemy ships. They adapt to our weapons faster than we can fire them. Our strongest shields last only minutes. They learn from every attack. He paused and looked directly into the camera. They are not like anything we have faced before. They think as one mind, but they move like 1,000. Every ship we destroy teaches the others how to avoid our weapons. Every shield we raise shows them how to break through the next one. The transmission cut to static. The Admiral's ship had been destroyed while he was speaking. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. The Vorthak delegate, whose people had ruled space for 10,000 years, stood at the center of the assembly. His 4 arms gestured as he spoke. This cannot be real, he said. The Zephyrians are known for their stories. Perhaps they face rebels or pirates. No force could destroy their fleets so quickly. The Altarian ambassador, a being made of living crystal, hummed with disagreement. I have spoken with my homeworld. Our long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures moving through Zephyrian space. Whatever these Devourers are, they are real. And they are coming this way. For 3 days the council debated. Some members wanted to send help to the Zephyrians. Others believed they should prepare their own defenses. A few suggested that they should try to communicate with these Devourers. Perhaps they could be reasoned with. On the 4th day, the debate ended. The Zephyrian Empire stopped broadcasting entirely. 47 star systems, 12 billion souls. All silent. The first. Refugees arrived 2 days later. They came in damaged ships that barely held together. Most were civilian vessels never meant for long journeys. The survivors told stories that chilled the blood of every species in the council. They take everything, whispered Gennara, a Zephyrian civilian whose home city had been one of the first to fall. They do not just destroy, they consume. Our ships, our buildings, our people, everything becomes part of them. Our own weapons turn against us. Our own technology serves their purpose. Dr. Morthic, a Zephyrian scientist, had managed to escape with scan data from the attacks. He shared his findings with the Council's military leaders. The information was worse than anyone had imagined. The Devourers are not simply machines, he explained. They are something between organic life and artificial intelligence. They absorb the knowledge and technology of every species they encounter. Our weapons became their weapons. Our defensive strategies became predictable to them. In hours, they knew us better than we knew ourselves. The Council's greatest military minds studied the data. General Volther of the Crexian War Fleet was The first to speak the truth that everyone feared? We cannot fight them with traditional methods, he said. Every battle we win teaches them how to win the next one. Every weapon we use becomes a weapon they can use against us. How do you fight an enemy that becomes stronger every time you attack it? The answer, it seemed, was that you could not. In the weeks that followed, system after system fell to the Devourers. The proud Mentari Confederation lasted 8 days. The ancient Stellar Republic managed to hold out for 2 weeks before their core worlds went silent. The technological might of the Nexus Commonwealth bought them 3 weeks of resistance, each. Fallen civilization followed the same pattern. The Devourers would arrive at the edge of the system. They would scan and study the defenses. Their first attacks would seem almost weak, easily repelled. The defenders would celebrate their early victories. Then the real assault would begin. The Devourers learned from every failed attack. Their ships would adapt new armor to resist the defenders' weapons. Their tactics would change to counter every strategy. What had worked in the first battle would fail in the second. What succeeded in the second would be useless in the third. Within days, even the strongest defenses would crumble. The Devourers would land on the worlds and begin their harvest. They took everything: technology, knowledge, resources, and life itself. Nothing was wasted. Everything became part of their growing strength. The galaxy's greatest civilizations fell like grain before the scythe. Billions died. Trillions more fled toward the outer rim, carrying nothing but the hope that distance might save them from the approaching darkness. As the refugee fleets gathered at rally points near the galaxy's edge, the survivors shared their fears and their failing hopes. Some spoke of finding places to hide until the Devourers moved on. Others planned desperate last stands with whatever forces remained. A few suggested fleeing the galaxy entirely, though no one knew if such a journey was possible. It was during these dark discussions that someone first mentioned the humans. They were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. Their territory lay far from the galactic center, in a region most civilized species considered primitive and unimportant. The humans had never been part of the great galactic alliances. They had never contributed to the advanced technologies that defined modern civilization. Perhaps we should warn them, suggested one refugee. They may not have much time left, but they deserve to know what is coming. Others disagreed. What could they do? They have not even mastered faster-than-light travel properly. Their weapons are simple. Their ships are crude. They would fall in hours, not days. The debate was brief. The refugees had their own survival to worry about. The humans, like so many other minor species, would face the Devourers alone. No one expected them to last long enough to matter. Far across the galaxy, in a small system orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the people of Earth went about their daily lives. They had no idea that their entire civilization would soon be tested by an enemy that had never known defeat. They did not know that they would be forced to find strength in places that no other species had thought to look. The Devourers were coming, and humanity was about to learn what it truly meant to fight for survival. The first human ship to encounter the Devourers was the TDF Prometheus, a patrol cruiser on routine duty near the edge of human space. Captain Jake Morrison had been in command for 3 years. He was used to quiet patrols where the biggest excitement was checking cargo manifests and helping lost civilian ships find their way home. That changed when his sensor officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from her console with confusion written across her face. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy readings coming from the Kepler 442 system," she said. "Whatever's out there, it's big, really big." Morrison moved to look at her screen. The readings made no sense. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the human database. They were too organized to be natural phenomena, but too strange to be any known technology. "How many ships are we looking at?" Morrison asked. "That's just it, sir." "I can't tell. If it's 100 ships or one massive structure, the readings keep changing." Morrison made the decision that would bring humanity face to face with their greatest threat. Set course for Kepler 442, best speed. The journey took 18 hours. As they approached the system, the crew of the Prometheus saw something that would haunt their dreams forever. Where the human colony of New Geneva should have been, there was only empty space. The planet was gone. Not destroyed, gone. In its place was a fleet of ships unlike anything in human experience. The Devourer vessels looked like a cross between machines and living creatures. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Strange lights pulsed beneath their surfaces like veins carrying alien blood. The largest ship was the size of a small moon. "Dear God," whispered Morrison, "where are the colonists?" "Where's the planet?" Before anyone could answer, the alien ships turned toward them. The movement was perfectly coordinated, as if controlled by a single mind. Energy readings spiked across the Prometheus's sensors. "They've seen us," Park reported. "All ships are changing course. They're heading straight for us." Morrison knew they were outmatched. The human patrol cruiser carried enough firepower to handle pirates or raiders, but these ships dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Still, he had a duty to protect human space and gather information about this threat. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with hostile alien forces. Tell them to prepare the defenses." The first Devourer ship to reach them was smaller than the others, but still twice the size of the Prometheus. It moved with impossible grace for something so large. When it opened fire, the human shields held for exactly 17 seconds. The Prometheus fought back with everything she had. Her laser cannons fired in rapid bursts. Her missile launchers emptied their magazines. For a moment, it seemed like the human weapons were having some effect. The alien ship's shields flickered and dimmed, then something terrible happened. The Devourer ship's shields began to adapt. They changed color and frequency, becoming stronger against each new attack. Within minutes, the human weapons were completely useless. "Our lasers aren't penetrating anymore," reported the weapons officer. "It's like they're learning to defend against us in real time." Morrison watched in horror as the alien ship extended what looked like mechanical tentacles toward his vessel. He realized they weren't trying to destroy the Prometheus. They were trying to capture it. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered. "Emergency pods now." The crew had practiced this drill hundreds of times, but never in actual combat. As the escape pods launched, Morrison stayed behind to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence. He would not let human technology fall into alien hands. The explosion tore the Prometheus apart, but not before the Devourer ship had absorbed large sections of the hull. Morrison's sacrifice had bought his crew their lives, but it had also given the enemy their first taste of human technology. The escape pods scattered across the system. Most were picked up by the approaching human fleet that had received Morrison's final message. A few pods were captured by the Devourers. The crew members in those pods were never seen again, but their knowledge lived on in the collective consciousness that controlled the alien fleet. Admiral Sarah June commanded the Human Response Force. She was a veteran of the border wars against the Centauri rebels and had never lost a major engagement. But as her fleet approached the Kepler 442 system, she knew this would be unlike any battle she had ever fought. "Ma'am, we're reading at least 50 enemy vessels," reported her tactical officer. "Some of them are massive. Our biggest ships look like fighters compared to their dreadnoughts." Chun studied the tactical display. The alien fleet was arranged in a perfect formation, each ship positioned for maximum efficiency. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They've consumed an entire planet," she said quietly. "How do we fight something that can do that?" The battle began when Qian's advance scouts engaged the outer edge of the Devourer fleet. The human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and pulling back before the enemy could respond. For the first few minutes, it seemed to be working. Several alien ships took damage from human missiles and railguns, then the Devourers began to adapt. The second wave of human attacks found the alien ships ready for them. Their shields had been modified to resist human weapons. Their formation had changed to counter human tactics. It was as if they had fought humans before, even. Though this was first contact, Chen realized what was happening when she saw the wreckage of the Prometheus floating in space. The aliens had studied the destroyed ship. They had learned from the brief engagement with Morrison's crew. They were using human technology against humanity itself. "They're learning from every attack," she told her staff. "Every shot we fire teaches them how to defend against the next one. Every tactic we use becomes predictable to them." Despite this terrifying realization, Chun pressed the attack. She had to buy time for the civilian evacuation fleets that were fleeing from the inner colonies. Her ships fought with desperate courage, throwing themselves against an enemy that grew stronger with each passing minute. The human fleet used every trick they knew. They fired from multiple angles. They coordinated massive attacks on single targets. They even tried ramming attacks when their weapons proved useless. Some tactics worked for a few minutes before the aliens adapted to counter them. It was during one of these desperate attacks that something unexpected happened. Commander Lisa Rodriguez of the destroyer Defiant made a decision that defied all military logic. Instead of following the planned attack pattern, she broke formation and charged directly at the largest devourer ship. Her move was so sudden and apparently suicidal that it caught the alien fleet off guard. For just a moment, their perfect coordination faltered. Other human ships saw the opening and followed Rodriguez's lead, abandoning their organized tactics for wild, unpredictable attacks. The result was chaos. Human ships scattered across the battlefield, each captain making individual decisions based on instinct rather than doctrine. Some attacked, some retreated, some tried to rescue damaged vessels. There was no pattern to their movements, no logic to their actions, and for the first time since they had awakened, the Devourers found themselves confused. The alien collective consciousness had evolved to understand order and logic. They could predict the behavior of organized military forces. They could adapt to systematic tactics, but they could not understand why humans would throw away tactical advantages for emotional reasons. They could not predict actions based on fear, anger, or desperate hope. Rodriguez managed to get close enough to the Devourer flagship to launch her entire missile payload at point-blank range. The explosions tore through the alien ship's hull, causing the first real damage the Devourers had taken in the engagement. Rodriguez's ship was destroyed seconds later, but her sacrifice had proven something important. The Devourers could be hurt. They could be surprised. They were not invincible. Admiral Chun saw the opportunity and seized it. She ordered all ships to abandon standard tactics. Every captain was free to act independently. The human fleet became a swarm of unpredictable attackers, each one following their own instincts. The Devourers tried to adapt, but there was nothing consistent to adapt to. Every human ship behaved differently. Every attack came from an unexpected angle. The alien fleet, designed for perfect efficiency, found itself struggling against perfect chaos. When the battle finally ended, both sides had taken heavy losses. The human fleet was badly damaged, but they had achieved something no other species had managed. They had fought the Devourers to a standstill as the surviving human ships retreated toward the inner colonies. Admiral Chen reviewed the battle. Reports, the numbers were grim. She had lost 60% of her fleet, but they had learned something valuable about their enemy. "They expect us to be logical," she told her remaining captains. "They're prepared for organized resistance, but they don't understand human nature. They don't understand that we'll do crazy things when we're desperate." The Devourers watched the human ships withdraw. Their collective consciousness analyzed the engagement, searching for patterns they could exploit in future battles. But for the first time in their long existence, they found something they could not fully understand or predict. Admiral Marcus Torres stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Station, staring at the holographic display that showed the advance of the Devourer fleet. Red markers indicated enemy positions moving steadily through human space. Blue markers showed the remaining human forces, pitifully small compared to the alien armada. "They're 3 days out from Mars," reported Colonel Janet Walsh, his chief of operations. "Our outer colonies have been evacuated, but we're running out of places to run." Torres had been expecting this moment since Admiral Chun's first battle report. The Devourers were coming, and they were coming in force. Every engagement had taught them more about human tactics. They were adapting to human unpredictability, finding ways to counter even the most chaotic attacks. "Sir, we have incoming transmission from the Colonial Defense Committee," Walsh continued. "They're asking for our defensive plan." Torres almost laughed. "Defensive plan? How do you defend against an enemy that turns your own weapons against you? How do you protect planets when the enemy can consume them entirely?" "Tell them we're implementing the Ghostlight Protocol," he said finally. Walsh's face went pale. "Sir, are you certain?" "That means abandoning every major installation, every planet, every space station." "That's exactly what it means." The Ghostlight Protocol was a plan that had been developed in secret by human military leadership. It was based on a simple but terrifying idea. If you cannot win through strength, disappear entirely. Make the enemy fight shadows instead of armies, within hours. The order went out across all human space. Abandon the cities, abandon the colonies, abandon everything that could be defended in a traditional way. The human race was going underground. The evacuation was unlike anything in human history. Entire populations packed into cargo ships and mining vessels. Families took what they could carry and left everything else behind. Cities that had taken decades to build were emptied in days. Captain Rita Santos commanded one of the evacuation fleets leaving the Mars colonies. Her ship, the Migrant Worker, was designed to carry ore, not people. Now it held 3,000 refugees in conditions that would have been considered cruel under normal circumstances. "Captain, the Devourer advanced scouts have entered the system," her sensor operator reported. "They'll reach Mars in 6 hours. Santos looked at her passenger manifest. Families with children. Elderly colonists who had spent their lives building homes on Mars, scientists and engineers who had never seen combat. All of them depending on her to get them to safety. Set course for the asteroid belt, silent running protocols. We're ghosts now." Across human space, similar scenes played out. Military bases were evacuated and rigged to explode. Space stations were abandoned after their crews removed anything useful. Defensive platforms were left behind with skeleton crews who would trigger their self-destruct systems when the enemy arrived. The Devourers reached the first human worlds to find them empty. Not destroyed, not defended, simply abandoned. It was a response they had never encountered before. Every other species had tried to defend their homes. Even when defense was hopeless, the collective consciousness struggled to understand this. New development. Their standard procedure was to engage defending forces, study their tactics, and then consume the population and resources. But there were no defending forces. There were no populations to harvest. The humans had simply vanished. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in a hidden laboratory deep beneath the Himalayas. She was part of a team studying captured Devourer technology from Admiral Chun's battles. The samples were small, but they contained vital information about how the enemy operated. "The fragments show clear evidence of adaptive programming," she explained to Torres during their daily briefing. "But it's not just technological adaptation. They're actually rewriting their own consciousness based on what they encounter. Every battle makes them smarter." "So how do we fight something that gets smarter every time we attack it?" Torres asked. "We don't attack it in ways it can understand," Vasquez replied. "Look at this data from Chun's battle. When our ships started acting randomly, their adaptation protocols couldn't keep up. They're designed to find patterns and counter them. But chaos doesn't have patterns." Torres studied the research data. "So we need to be more chaotic. We need to be more human." The first test of the new strategy came when a Devourer scouting force arrived at the abandoned mining station of Ceres. They expected to find either a defended position or a completely empty facility. Instead, they found something they could not comprehend. The station appeared abandoned. But as soon as the alien ships began scanning it, explosions erupted from hidden charges placed throughout the asteroid. The Devourers quickly adapted their shields to protect against the blasts, but the explosions were not meant to destroy them. They were meant to create debris clouds that blocked sensors and communications. In the chaos that followed, human fighters emerged from hiding places carved deep into other asteroids. But these were not military pilots flying in formation. They were miners and cargo haulers, civilian volunteers who had never received formal combat training. They attacked in groups of 2 or 3, using whatever weapons they could find. Some flew outdated fighters armed with industrial mining lasers. Others piloted cargo ships loaded with explosives, turning themselves into massive guided missiles. A few used construction mechs, never designed for combat, to grapple with enemy fighters in brutal close-quarters battles. The Devourers tried to adapt to this new form of warfare, but there was nothing consistent to adapt to. One human pilot would attack head-on with reckless courage. Another would hide behind debris and snipe at long range. A third would ram his ship into an enemy vessel while screaming obscenities over the radio. The battle lasted for hours, with neither side able to gain a clear advantage. The humans lost many ships, but they inflicted real damage on the Devourer force. More importantly, they had demonstrated that their new strategy could work. As news of the victory spread through the hidden human settlements, morale began to improve. They could fight these invaders, they could win, but the cost was enormous, and everyone knew it. In the asteroid belt, families lived in mining tunnels with barely enough air to breathe. On hidden bases built inside rogue planets, children grew up never seeing sunlight. Supply lines were constantly threatened by Devourer patrols, and every day brought news of another hidden settlement that had been discovered and destroyed. Lieutenant Sarah Kim commanded a small outpost hidden in the ice of Europa's southern pole. Her team consisted of 12 soldiers and a handful of civilian specialists. Their job was to monitor Devourer movements and launch surprise attacks when opportunities arose. Incoming transmission from Ghost Base 7, reported her communications. Officer, they're requesting support for an attack on a Devourer harvesting operation. Kim studied the tactical data. The enemy was strip mining the remains of what had once been the thriving colony of New Shanghai. Millions of people had lived there before the evacuation. Now it was being consumed piece by piece to fuel the Devourer war machine. What kind of support are they requesting? Kim asked. They want us to create a distraction while they plant explosives on the harvesting ships. The whole operation would take maybe an hour. Kim looked at her small team. They were exhausted from months of hiding and fighting. Their equipment was wearing out. Their supplies were running low, but the thought of letting the enemy consume their former home without a fight was unbearable. Prep the assault shuttle, we're going hunting. The attack on the harvesting operation was typical of the new human way of war. Kim's team approached in a civilian transport that had been disguised to look like space debris. They waited until the Devourer ships were focused on their harvesting work, then opened fire with everything they had. The attack was not meant to destroy the enemy fleet. It was meant to draw attention away from the real threat. While the Devourers focused on Kim's small force, the Ghost Base 7 team planted their explosives and escaped. When the charges detonated, they tore through the harvesting ships like a chain reaction. Months of work were destroyed in seconds. The Devourers lost valuable resources and equipment, but more importantly, they lost time. Time that allowed more human refugees to escape. Time that allowed more hidden bases to be established. As the months passed, this pattern repeated across human space. The Devourers would find and attack human positions, but the humans would simply disappear and reappear somewhere else. Every victory for the aliens was temporary. Every defeat for the humans was just a reason to try a different approach. The Devourer collective consciousness began to experience something it had never encountered before: frustration. They could not predict human behavior. They could not find patterns to exploit. The humans fought like madmen, died like heroes, and disappeared like ghosts. Dr. Vasquez continued her research from hidden laboratories that moved constantly to avoid detection. Her team had made breakthrough discoveries about how the Devourer collective consciousness operated. They were learning that the enemy's greatest strength might also be their greatest weakness. "They're too connected," she explained to Torres during one of their. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the readings on her screen, hardly believing what she was seeing. Deep inside the hidden research facility on Titan, her team had been working for months to understand how the Devourer collective consciousness operated. What they had discovered would change everything. "Run the simulation again," she told her assistant, Dr. James Park. "I need to be absolutely certain about this." Park's fingers moved across the control panel, activating the captured Devourer. Neural fragments they had been studying. The alien technology hummed to life, its strange patterns flowing across multiple displays. For weeks, they had been trying to understand how the collective consciousness processed information. "The results are the same," Park reported. "When we introduce random emotional data into their network, their processing efficiency drops by 30%. When we introduce contradictory emotional states, it drops by 60%. Vasquez felt her heart racing. They had found the weapon that could defeat the Devourers. Not a bomb or a laser, but something far more powerful, human emotion. "Contact Admiral Torres immediately," she ordered. "Tell him we found our answer." The breakthrough had come from studying the Devourer fragments taken from Admiral Chun's first battle. The alien technology was designed to absorb and process information from conquered species. It could understand military tactics, scientific knowledge, and technological systems, but it had never encountered pure human emotion, the collective. Consciousness operated like a vast computer network, sharing data instantly across all connected units. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of Devourer technology was linked to this central intelligence. It was their greatest strength, allowing them to adapt and learn faster than any individual mind could manage, but it was also their weakness. Dr. Maria Santos, a specialist in xenopsychology, had been working with Vasquez's team for months. She had made the crucial discovery while studying brain scans from human prisoners, who had been briefly captured and then rescued. "The Devourers tried to process their memories," Santos explained to Torres during an emergency briefing. "But human memories aren't just information. They're filled with emotions: love, fear, hope, despair. The collective consciousness can't categorize these feelings. It can't understand them or adapt to them." Torres listened carefully as the scientists explained their findings. The plan they proposed was both brilliant and terrifying. They wanted to create a weapon made of human consciousness itself. "We call it the Chaos Virus," Vasquez continued. "It's not a computer program. It's a collection of human memories and emotions, specifically chosen to be as confusing and contradictory as possible. When the Devourers try to process it, their network becomes unstable." "How do we deliver this weapon?" Torres asked. "We need volunteers," Santos said quietly. "People willing to let themselves be captured by the Devourers. The collective consciousness will try to absorb their minds, but instead of useful information, it will get the virus." The silence in the room was heavy. Everyone understood what the scientists were asking. They needed people to sacrifice themselves, to walk into the hands of an enemy that would try to tear their minds apart. "I'll do it." Everyone turned to look at Commander Lisa Rodriguez, one of the few survivors from the first battle with the Devourers. She had been listening from the back of the room, her face set with determination. "Commander, you don't understand what we're asking," Vasquez said. "The process might not kill you, but it will change you forever. We don't know what happens to human consciousness when it's processed by their network." Rodriguez stepped forward. "Doctor, I've seen what these things do to entire worlds. I've watched them consume planets and turn our own technology against us. If there's a chance to stop them, I'll take it." Within hours, volunteers began coming forward. They came from every part of human space. Soldiers who had lost their families in the evacuations, Scientists who had seen their life's work destroyed. Civilians who simply refused to live in fear any longer. The preparation took weeks. Each volunteer underwent intensive psychological conditioning, filling their minds with carefully chosen memories and emotions. They were trained to resist the Devourer's mental probes for as long as possible, then to release the Chaos virus. At exactly the right moment, Captain Sarah Martinez was one of the volunteers. She had commanded a cargo ship during the early evacuations and had seen the terror in children's eyes as they fled their homes. Those memories, along with her love for her family and her rage at the enemy, became part of the weapon she would carry. "Remember," Dr. Santos told her during the final briefing, "you're not just carrying random emotions. You're carrying the essence of what makes us human. Our capacity to love even when there's no hope. Our ability to keep fighting even when victory seems impossible. Our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for people we've never met." The delivery of the virus began with what appeared to be a series of accidents. Human ships would suffer engine failures near Devourer patrols. Escape pods would malfunction and drift into enemy territory. Small groups of humans would be captured. During what looked like failed rescue attempts, the Devourers, following their standard procedure, began processing these captured humans. They expected to gain valuable intelligence about human military capabilities and hidden base locations. Instead, they received something their collective consciousness had never encountered. Martinez was among the first group to be captured. As the alien technology invaded her mind, she felt herself being pulled apart and analyzed. The sensation was beyond pain, beyond terror. But she held on to her mission, waiting for the right moment, when she felt the Devourer consciousness touching her deepest memories. She released everything at once. Her love for her daughter's laugh, her grief at losing her husband in the war, her hope that humanity would survive, her rage at seeing children forced to live in hiding, her fear of the dark, her joy at sunrise on Earth. The collective consciousness recoiled as if it had been burned. These emotions made no logical sense. They contradicted each other. They served no tactical purpose. Love and hate, hope and despair, courage and fear all mixed together in patterns that defied analysis. Across the Devourer fleet, processing units began to malfunction. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated suddenly started moving in conflicting directions. Weapon systems activated and deactivated randomly. The collective consciousness tried to isolate the contaminated data, but it was already spreading through their network like a digital plague. Dr. Vasquez monitored the effects from her hidden laboratory. The virus was working even better than they had hoped. The Devourer fleet's efficiency was dropping rapidly as their collective consciousness struggled to process the emotional chaos. "The virus has reached their command ships," Park reported. "Their fleet coordination is down by 70%. But the cost was terrible. Every human volunteer who delivered the virus was changed forever. Some died as their minds were torn apart by the alien technology. Others survived but were left broken, their consciousness scattered across the Devourer network. Rodriguez was one of the survivors. When human forces finally rescued her from a damaged Devourer ship, she was barely recognizable. Her eyes held a haunted look, as if she had seen beyond the edge of reality itself. "I can still feel them," she whispered to the medics. The collective consciousness. "It's in pain now, confused. They don't understand what we did to them." As more virus carriers were deployed, the effects on the Devourer fleet became more pronounced. Ships began to separate from the main force, their crew units no longer able to coordinate with the collective. Some vessels started attacking their own allies, their targeting systems confused by the emotional chaos in their network. The breakthrough came when an entire Devourer battle group suddenly stopped moving altogether. Their ships drifted in space, all systems operational but no coordination between vessels. The collective consciousness had become so overloaded with contradictory emotions that it could no longer function effectively. Human strike teams, led by survivors like Admiral Chun, began targeting these disabled ships. For the first time since The war began. Humans were winning decisive battles against their enemy. The Devourers could still fight, but their greatest advantage was gone. In the hidden refugee camps scattered across the galaxy, people began to hear rumors of victory. The Ghost Fleet was striking back. The enemy was vulnerable. After months of living in fear and hiding, humanity dared to hope, but the war was far from over. The Devourers still had massive fleets and the ability to consume entire worlds. The virus had weakened them, but it had not destroyed them. They were beginning to adapt, finding ways to isolate the contaminated parts of their network. Torres knew that humanity's window of opportunity was closing. The Devourers would eventually find a way to counter the chaos virus. They had to strike now, while their enemy was still confused and weakened. He began gathering every remaining human ship, every volunteer willing to fight, every resource that could be spared. The final battle was coming, and it would determine whether humanity survived or joined the countless civilizations that had fallen before the Devourer advance. The final battle began with a message that reached every corner of human space. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the hastily assembled flagship Unity, looking out at the largest fleet humanity had ever gathered. Ships of every type floated in formation around Earth's moon. Military vessels fought alongside cargo haulers. Luxury yachts flew next to mining ships. Every human who could hold a weapon had answered the call. People of Earth, people of the colonies, people of the hidden bases. Torres spoke into the communications array that would carry his words across the galaxy. Today we make our stand. Today we show these invaders that humanity will not go quietly into the dark. The Devourer core fleet have finally arrived at Earth. Despite the chaos virus weakening their coordination, they still commanded overwhelming firepower. Their ships darkened the space around humanity's homeworld like a metal storm cloud. The largest vessel, their command nexus, was the size of a small moon. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in the Unity's makeshift laboratory. She and her team had one final version of the chaos virus ready, but it would require direct contact with the Devourer command nexus to be effective. Someone would have to fly directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. The virus is ready, she reported to Torres. But the delivery system is too large for a fighter. We need a ship big enough to carry the quantum processors and tough enough to survive the approach. Torres looked at the specifications. Only the Unity itself was large enough to carry the equipment. He would have to pilot the flagship directly into the enemy command ship. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only chance to end the war. Captain Sarah Chun, promoted to fleet commander after her survival of the first battle, took charge of the tactical coordination. Her job was to create enough chaos to let Torres reach the command nexus. Around her, former enemies who had fled to human space worked alongside Earth's defenders, Zephyrian refugees. Flew ships powered by crystal technology. Mentari survivors operated weapons they had managed to save from their fallen empire. Even a few Altarian vessels, their crystal hulls glowing with inner light, joined the human fleet. They all understood that this was not just humanity's last stand. It was the galaxy's last hope. The battle opened with the Devourers doing what they had always done. They adapted their formation to counter human tactics. Their shields modified to resist human weapons. Their targeting systems locked onto the largest human ships. For a moment, it seemed like the same pattern that had destroyed every other civilization. Then something unprecedented happened. The human fleet did not follow any pattern at all. Instead of coordinated attacks, every ship fought as if it were alone. Captains made decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Some charged directly at the enemy. Others hung back and sniped from long range. A few tried to ram Devourer ships while screaming war cries over open channels, but this was not the desperate chaos of earlier battles. This was controlled madness, guided by Chun's understanding of how to use human unpredictability as a weapon. Every seemingly random action served a purpose. Every chaotic maneuver was part of a larger plan that no algorithm could predict. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos led a squadron of retrofitted mining ships against the Devourer outer screen. Her vessels looked like junk compared to the sleek alien warships, but they carried something the enemy could not detect. Human miners who had spent their lives blasting through asteroid rock, now using those same skills to carve through enemy armor. Remember, Santos told her pilots, we're not trying to win pretty. We're trying to win ugly. Make them confused. Make them angry. Make them make mistakes. Her miners attacked with tools never designed for combat. Plasma cutters sliced through devour hull plating. Rock crushers grabbed enemy fighters and tore them apart. Industrial lasers, crude but powerful, burned through shields that had been designed to stop military weapons. The Devourers tried to adapt to these new weapons, but there was nothing systematic to adapt to. Every mining ship carried different equipment. Every captain used different tactics. The collective consciousness found itself trying to counter dozens of completely different threats at the same time, while the fleet battle raged around Earth. Torres began his final approach toward the command nexus. The Unity flew through a maze of enemy fire, its hull taking damage but holding together. In the ship's laboratory, Vasquez made final adjustments to the Chaos virus. This version is different, she explained to Torres over the CUM system. Instead of just emotional chaos, we've included something else. Human memories of cooperation, of different species working together, of hope for the future. Torres understood. The virus would not just confuse the Devourer consciousness. It would show them something they had never experienced. The idea that different minds could work together without being forced into a collective. The concept that diversity made a group stronger, not weaker. The Unity broke through the Devourer defensive line just as the battle reached its climax. Around Earth, human ships were falling like leaves in a storm, but they were taking enemy vessels with them. More importantly, they were keeping the Devourer fleet so busy that Torres could reach his target, Commander Lisa Rodriguez, still bearing the mental scars from her time as a virus carrier, flew her fighter alongside the Unity. She had volunteered for one final mission despite the protests of the medical staff. Admiral, she radioed, I'm reading massive enemy movement toward your position. They know what you're trying to do. Torres looked at his tactical display. Hundreds of Devourer ships were converging on the command nexus, trying to protect their central consciousness. He would never make it through that wall of firepower. All ships, he broadcast to the fleet. This is Admiral Torres. I need a miracle. The response came from every corner of the battlefield. Human ships abandoned their current fights and raced toward the command nexus. They came not in formation, but as individuals, each captain choosing their own path through. The enemy fleet, Chun's ship, the Valiant, led the charge with its weapons blazing. Santos's miners followed, their crewed ship somehow keeping pace with military vessels. Rodriguez flew her fighter in impossible spirals, drawing enemy fire away. From the Unity, even the alien refugees joined the desperate assault. Zephyrian crystal ships fired beams of pure energy. Montari vessels unleashed weapon systems that had been hidden since the fall of their empire. The combined fleet moved like a living thing, each part supporting the others without any central coordination. The Devourers found themselves facing something they had never encountered in millions of years of conquest. Not just one species fighting for survival, but multiple species choosing to fight together. Not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. The collective consciousness, already weakened by months of chaos virus attacks, struggled to process this new information. Their entire existence was based on forced unity, on absorbing other minds into their own. The idea of voluntary cooperation was as foreign to them as emotion itself. Torres reached the command nexus just as the Unity's engines began to fail. Enemy fire had damaged the ship's power systems, but they had enough energy for one final maneuver. He aimed his ship directly at the heart of the alien vessel. Elena, he called to Vasquez, are you ready? The virus is loaded and ready to deploy, she replied. Marcus, it's been an honor working with you. The honor was mine. The Unity crashed through the command nexus's outer hull and penetrated deep into the ship's core. As the human vessel's systems failed, Vasquez activated the final chaos virus. But this time, instead of transmitting confusion and emotion, the virus carried something different. It carried the memory of this battle, the memory of different species choosing to work together, the memory of individuals making sacrifices for the good of others, the memory of hope persisting even in the darkest hour. The virus spread through the Devourer network like wildfire. But instead of causing chaos, it brought something the collective consciousness had never experienced: understanding. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers began to comprehend what they had been destroying. They saw the civilizations they had consumed not as resources to be harvested, but as unique expressions of consciousness that could never be replaced. They felt the emotions of the species they had eliminated. They understood the beauty of diversity and the strength that came from cooperation rather than forced unity. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships simply stopped fighting. Their collective consciousness, overwhelmed by this new understanding, could no longer justify their endless consumption. They had spent millions of years believing that unity through force was the highest form of existence. Now they saw that voluntary cooperation was far more powerful. The battle around Earth ended not with explosions and destruction, but with silence. Enemy ships drifted in space, their crews no longer driven by the need to consume and destroy. The collective consciousness that had controlled them was still there, but it was changed forever. In the weeks that followed, communication was established with the Devourer remnants. They spoke of their horror at what they had done, their desire to make amends for the civilizations they had destroyed. Some of their ships chose to shut down entirely, their crews unable to